Hi, and thanks for choosing to watch this video. My name is Mary DeSimone, and I'm from Mountaintop Education, where we work to make confident teachers of our English language learners. And if one of the things I've realized over the years is that working in push-in ESL can be especially tricky, and how do we become confident in there, taking the time to make sure we're supporting our students with the limited time we often have with them. So in the past, I've been working on these 8 ways to really get the most out of push-in ESL. And of course, they're all important. They're going to flow together. But what I want to spend some time on today is the 5th one, which is really having these impactful push-in L strategies. So feel free to pause and read through this. But we're going to jump into how to plan for push-in ESL and use it intentionally and have some good strategies there. Because when it's used intentionally, we know it can have some really great benefits, right? It's going to increase the interactions that our English language learners are having with their English-speaking peers. We're going to have them use authentic language in meaningful discourse. So a lot of what we're teaching in the Pullout ELD, if we're lucky enough to have them there as well, is more protected language, practicing the language more deeply. And here we can be in the classroom and see how they're actually putting it into practice, which brings us to the next point of really taking the time to watch and listen to the students as well. It's a great way to do some formative assessment and see what you need to work on specifically for language. So DESE has put a lot of emphasis on shared responsibility. If you look at the ESL toolkit, the quick reference guide for push-in ESL, it talks about ESL teachers. Their job is to focus on the language-driven instruction, while the content area teachers are responsible for content instruction and content area language. Of course, we want our content teachers to be working on content language, but as L teachers, we also know that that's our expertise, is the language piece. And knowing that our teachers have gone through SCI training and are endorsed, there's still professional development that we all need to get on it. So I think through all of our experience, we know that we also need to be in there modeling and supporting each other with this. So as far as the ESL teachers focus on language-driven instruction, we want to be able to break things down by dimension, right? So word, sentence, and discourse. We want to look at the key uses of language, going back into WIDA. And then we really want to focus on those language functions and cross-content, cross-curricular language pieces that we can do. So how do we do that? If you look at the WIDA key language uses, this is an example from grades 9 through 12. Each grade span has a chart, and it's going to show you which key uses are most popular in those content areas at that grade span. So looking at this high school example, we can see that argue is used prominently, most prominently actually, in all of the content areas, including social and instructional purposes, and then explain is the next one, right? It's used most prominently in all, and then still prominently for ELA. So we're going to be looking at that for each grade span and say, okay, I'm going to get a lot of bang for my buck by working on these language pieces because they're going to be in all content areas. So knowing that, I'm going to look at argue across the curriculum. I know that the state standards, when I look in for ELA, again, this was a 9 through 12 I had looked up. If I pull out just some of the key pieces for it, in the argue, you're going to have introduce, develop claims, counterclaims, there's evidence, there's establish and maintain a style, and there's a concluding statement. That's going to be very similar, and you can see the color coding to the ELA WIDA language expectations, the math WIDA language expectations. So the wording is changing a little bit, right? In math, we create precise conjecture as opposed to introduction, but it's going to be very similar in what we can do with students in the format that we can set up to teach language in the classroom and model it for classroom teachers so that they can take what we've done and do it with their other classroom, their other classes. So you can see by the color coding here, counterclaims, and even refuting in math, right? So the common language that we can teach is going to be key for students to make progress. Now, as language teachers, we're going to think of the dimensions of language. So continuing with this example at more of a high school level, this is one of the resources that I've created that when I did push an ESL, I would bring to the classrooms and share. So I wanted to be able for students, and this was for all students, not just our Ls, to look at the words that went with claim in this case, and the words that went with counterclaim. And we would talk about that, make sure they were clear. Then some sentence structures for it. And they're up on the board. If students need them, they can use them. We print out as well. But this slide would have been part of probably 5 or 10 pages of the slide deck. So underneath, I would have a variety of sentence frames that I could put in, a variety of words that would go with claim and counterclaim, right? And we're doing this with all different, we're doing it with explain, we can do it with main idea, but this is a format that can really work. As you use it in different grade levels or in different content areas, you can easily switch out the vocabulary that's needed. And eventually, because you're sharing this with the teachers as well, the students are used to using it and teachers can have their own copy, right? And create something that's useful for their students. So you're getting the advantage of teaching the language to the Ls, you're modeling it for classroom teachers who can reuse it, and you're showing it to the English language speakers, the native speakers, who also can use the support. To bring it up to the discourse level, Jeff Sweers is one of my favorite researchers and has some really great academic language activities to use. This one is called the pro-con activity. So whatever activity you're choosing, think of that word level, the sentence level, and what activity are you bringing it into discourse level? In this case, since again, we're doing argue, we know that discourse level is going to need some transition words as well, right, to make it flow. So I've added transition words to this slide that I'd put up. I don't want my students using but anymore because they use it all the time. I need them to step it up a level. So thinking of the words that you want to cross out that they can't use is also key here. And then we've been working on this for a while. So there's some different frames down here that got put in. And again, you can change them up. So this activity for the example up here, it's about school and the pros and cons of school itself. So the activity, if you don't know it, is the first student is going to say pro and move their hand in that direction and say, one advantage is that you learn things in school. Also, you can see your friends. Their counterpart is going to say con. However, you need to get up very early in the morning. Another negative aspect of school is all the homework because it takes a long time. And they're going to go back and forth. The first partner says pro, the second partner says con, and they continue on. They can do this for any topic that you're having them work with. Again, once you show this activity to a classroom teacher and facilitate it in that class, they can use this on their own, and you're building their repertoire as well and ensuring that the students are actively participating when you're not there. We can do a similar piece in math, right? So if we move over to explain in math, we saw that explain was also a really prominent key use of language. So here, this was an 8th grade math class, and we were working on the word level for equations. And as you look at the words, our students were getting quite confused because there's a lot of multiple meaning words here. And then there's some very specific meanings for math. So we had to explain to them that term was not the school term of first, second, third term, but what does it mean in math, right? And it's similar with expression. So taking that time for the kids to see the multiple meaning words and then moving it into the sentence form. So in this case, we had pre-taught a lot of sequence language, but then they needed to know some more phrasing of how to explain how they solved a problem. So again, we're color coding what they're doing. So distribute, combine like terms, move variables to one side of the equation. So they can take these with the sequence language that we have and start to explain what they're doing. Now you have, hopefully, more students in class raising their hand or turning to talk and be able to really say in a full sentence, a full paragraph of what they're doing. And then we finally, as we moved on through the unit, we brought it up to a discourse level. We wanted students to be able to more deeply explain why, in this case, or how I should say, their equations were classified, right? So again, we're moving along. We had this really specific sentence frame or answer frame where the students could choose which word phrases to put in the blank. So if I do some action, I notice that the coefficients of x are, they make a determination, then and or but the constants are whichever, right? Therefore, this equation has. So they are speaking through and then writing through the process of how they solved the equation. We know that the testing, Access, and MCAS is asking for this type of thing. We know that students in all content areas need to do some explaining of their thought process. So this is another way to bring it into the math classroom, but also thinking how it can go through other content areas with a very similar frame. So I hope you found this helpful as a way to really think through how to make use of your time, especially going into many classrooms and probably different grade levels, different content areas, but really processing where can you get the biggest bang for your buck? How can you be most impactful in the classrooms? Feel free to scan the code. I'd love to stay in touch. If you want more information on this, as you saw, there are many other places to really dive into how to make push-in work well. I would love to stay in touch. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of the conference.